Hi, this is Zach with Worn and Wound. Today I'll be taking a look at two of the brand new Techne Harrier watches. We've been following the Techne brand for some time. They're, a great manufacturer of affordable aviator-inspired watches, and this newest offering from them, kind of really you can see the kind of evolution of the brand and their manufacturing as well as their own kind of what makes them unique, their little style points. There's little details here that make the watches more interesting, as well as the use of some interesting movements. So this watch here, which is the reference 363, is powered by a Miyota 9015 automatic movement in it, very trusty Japanese-made automatic movement. The watch goes for $490, which is a great price for an automatic with that movement in it. And then we have the Harrier reference 392, and this has a Miyota quartz movement in it, and it doesn't just have kind of typical standard 3-hand time. It also has a 24-hour hand and a retrograde dual time indicator here, which is very cool, as well as an extra large date, which we'll show you how that works later. And this one comes in at $265. So just there alone, you have two great options. Both actually have sapphire crystals, really well detailed. So let's take a closer look now. The case of the Techne Harrier has a pretty classic pilot or aviator design, but with a couple of unique geometric features that make it just have a little bit of its own unique character to it. So in terms of size, it's a 41 millimeter diameter, 51 millimeter lug to lug, 11.1 millimeter thick, so fairly thin, which is nice, and 20 millimeter lug width here. Like I said, overall, fairly simple design. Has a nice kind of fat bezel here, which frames the dial very nicely. It's clearly a very bold dial, so I think it's nice to have that tempered a little bit by the extra metal around it. But perhaps the most interesting kind of design feature is the lugs. So looking at the top, the lugs are kind of classic looking, just kind of come off. But looking at the side, they have a little bit of a strange shape here. There's sort of like a teardrop form to them, or the kind of this rounded area, but there's also this kind of harsh angle here. I think overall, all of these watches, all the Techne watches, are inspired by aviation equipment, dashboard equipment, and these just little extra features I think kind of bring that home. One thing I did think that was a little strange though is that the strap does not attach the lug, the indentation inside for the spring bar is not centered in this kind of circular area, which I just would have expected given the shape of the design. The crown here is a fairly small crown. It is a screw down. It has a nice design though. It's kind of has these large fluted shapes going around it, which make it very grippable, very nice. It is a drop small. It does come out, but I do think it's not too small. I think obviously the tension of this watch should be on the dial, so that doesn't overwhelm anything. And it is signed with an interesting little logo here that's just kind of an interesting little shape. The case back on this watch, the reference 392 is just solid steel. This is a quartz movement, so there is nothing to show. We'll take a look now at the reference 363, the automatic version with PVD coating, and you can see here that it does have a display case back to show the 9015 movement, which this is the standard decoration of a 9015 movement, but it does have Côte de Genève stripes there, which give you something to look at. The PVD version is, as you expect, has a very nice coating on it. It's very attractive. Overall, I think in both cases, the design is really nice and it works really well with the aesthetic. The 41 millimeter size is appropriate. It's not an overwhelming watch. It's not too small. It's just kind of right. Taking a look now at the dial of the Techne Harrier reference 363, the automatic version, you see it as very clean, classic aviator style. I think there's clear kind of similarities to this, and Sin watches, Bell & Ross watches, those really kind of modern, bold aviators. And I think the Techne, though, is executed extremely well. There's very, very crisp printing all around. One thing I really like, so the background of the black background has a very kind of a matte black that matches the PVD really, really nicely. And in the center, you can see there's actually an impressed area that goes down, creating a little elevation change, which just kind of disrupts the flatness of the black and makes the watch just a little bit more texturally interesting. So now looking at the indexes, going around the outer edge, you have bold hash marks, a larger one every 5 minutes or hour, smaller ones for the individual minutes or seconds. And then there's actually a little fine white line running around the very outer edge. Clearly there's a large 12, 6, 9 numeral here in kind of a modern font. At 3 o'clock you have a date window. The Miyota 9015 date is actually a silver disc with a black date on it, which is nice. It's less contrasty than black on white, but it's not overly contrasty. And right next to it, I'll actually move the hand here. You'll see there is this white hash mark area with an arrow next to it, referring to aviation, cockpit equipment. It's really a superficial detail, but it's just something to add a little bit of something unique, a little bit of a character, I guess, that the Techne Harrier has that other watches don't. Here, just below 12, you have Techne presented their new logo, which has a kind of an old-fashioned font to it. I actually really like it. I think it's a little bit more unique, than their older logo. And above 6, you have Harrier automatic 24 joules. One kind of strange thing right below Techne in a red text, it's very hard to see with the naked eye, especially because it's so close to the center. It says Opus Manufactum. Not really 100% sure what that means, but it is an interesting little detail nevertheless. So now just talking a little bit about the Miyota 9015 movement. This is a movement that we like a lot. It's a very good automatic movement. It's a very good alternative to the ETA 2824 or Sellita SW 220. It is a hand-windable hacking movement by Miyota, made in Japan, with a frequency of 28,800 beats per hour. Pull it out one stop here, and you can change the date by turning it, the crown clockwise. Pull out all the way, obviously, and you can change the time. The reference 392 quartz version of the watch has a couple of added features that make it, very unique, I think, and also kind of increase the instrument feeling of the watch. And for a watch that costs less at $265, I think actually really increases the value by having extra functions. So, it has overall the same general aesthetic as the automatic version, with the same bold outer index here and the same large 12 and 6. The 9 has been dropped here for a 24-hour sub-dial. And at 6 o'clock, you have a retrograde dual time hand here, which is a really cool function. So, it is a hand that you set separately from the main hour so that you can track a second time zone anywhere, that you want to. All of these sub-dials are also debossed into the dial, so you have, once again, kind of a nice elevation change. So now, I'll show you a little bit how this works. So with the crown pulled out one stop, if you turn it clockwise, you change the date here. Now, one thing that's interesting is the date is very large, and in order to do that, this watch actually has a mechanism where it has 2 date discs, and you can see that kick in when you go, show you to 31. So now when I go back to 1, you'll see another date wheel sweep over this date wheel. So at halfway through the month, you essentially have a date wheel with a window in it. I think this is just really cool. I like having the large date here. It makes it a little bit more interesting. Clearly emphasizes the date. 9 o'clock, you have a 24-hour hand. This is tells you essentially just AM PM, that you do not set differently from the main hour and minute. And then here at 6 o'clock, you have this retrograde. So with the crown one stop out, you turn it counterclockwise towards you, and you'll see that the hour just jumps ahead. And when you hit 24, it snaps all the way back. So I can show that to you one more time. It's a really cool function. I really like how it separates the information out. Usually when you have a dual time watch, it's based on the central axis as well, so you end up having 4 hands on one axis. It can be a lot of information on top of each other, but this really separates it out very easily. And then actually having it on this, arcing scale makes it, I think, even easier to read. And then the retrograde snapping back. It's just very cool little function there. Both of the versions of the Harrier have these kind of nice modern aviator hands that I really like. They're partially skeletonized about halfway, so as you can see there's apertures, you know, halfway up. The minute hand is a long kind of slender fence post, whereas the hour hand is kind of a broader sword shape. You know, I think they're really easy to distinguish from each other, which is really nice and obviously important in a watch like an aviator where illegibility is kind of an intrinsic element of the design. Taking a quick look at the other model, then you also have the sub-dial hands, the 24-hour and the dual time are both these kind of oversized arrows, but the GMT or the dual time is bright green, just really separating it out. Now both watches are loomed, all the markings on the hands are loomed. They have kind of a, you know, it's not the brightest loom on earth, but you know, I think it's substantial if you get a good charge onto it. It is like a light green color, which is nice and obviously just works with the overall design. On the wrist, the Techne Harriers both are very, very comfortable. They're nice, kind of slim watches, you know, that don't have like an overwhelming amount of bulk to them, which is nice, but they're very still substantial, you know, kind of sturdy looking and feeling watches. The 41 millimeter diameter here, you know, is a kind of a nice medium size, so it works well on a 7-inch wrist, which I have, but I think it would also work going up, you know, for larger wrists as well. Overall, you know, I just think this really achieves the modern aviator style quite nicely, and you know, and does so in obviously a very affordable package. You have the really kind of aggressive design that you know, I think is kind of a signature to the style. So the numbers and the markings really jump out at you. This also, I think, for a PVD watch is particularly nice and works especially well with this kind of just general design. This is called their kind of a cowhide strap, and it has a kind of a nice matte texture. This one is a sand color. I think it really kind of offsets the black of the PVD really nicely, and it has a very rugged look to it that, you know, I think even in the time I've started to wear it, it's got a little bit of weathering, and just it's really going to take on a lot of character and just look great. On the wrist, the reference 392 dual time Harrier has even, I think, more presence and is more aggressive given the additional sub-dials and hands. You know, overall, though, once again, it does deliver on that modern aviator style really nicely. This strap here is an oiled leather with some heavy padding in it, so it has some nice thickness by the lug. It has ivory stitching here. I think the black actually works really nicely with the steel case version as it kind of contrasts that, yet works with, you know, obviously the black of the dial. One other thing here is that we have it on a deployment clasp, but yet another optional piece that you can buy from Techne for $20. You know, obviously it's not necessary, but if you prefer deployment clasps over thumbnail clasps, you can get a Techne signed one, and it is one of good quality. Yeah, you know, overall, I think in case of, you know, really both watches here, you just have, you know, really, really great option for an affordable aviator design. To wrap up, the new Techne Harrier watches I think are a really great affordable option for people who are seeking the modern aviator style in a watch. And they don't really skimp, I think, on details or build at all. You know, you don't really have a feeling that you're wearing something that is significantly cheaper than, say, you know, a $2,500 Bell & Ross, something like that, because there's really, you know, great execution on the dials. I really like the detail of the kind of impressed area, as well as that kind of inclusion of sort of cockpit language in that kind of hash-marked area. You know, and I think also for two different options in one style of watch, you know, that they both have kind of the same design vocabulary, they are two very different watches. So for, you know, an automatic 9015, the $490 reference 363, it's a really great option, and frankly for PVD, Sapphire Crystal, Miyota 9015 movement, $490 is an outstanding price. And then for the quartz version with dual time and 24-hour hand, which is a whole lot more, you know, frankly, functionality, the $265 reference 392, you know, I think does a really good job and still comes across as having that really kind of great, bold aesthetic. So yeah, really like these watches. Please read the full review at Worn and Wound. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.